for my, and I don't know if these are going to go. So something's got to give here. I'll put it, oh my God. I will put it back on. Just let it just sit there a minute. I have to say, first of all, that I have never sung a song in all my years of going to church that had the word sandwich in it. So I thank you for that.
We do like our food around here, so,
So I just want to get this out of the way so that you know what's going on before we get on with the extension of the joy that we all shared with each other last night. And if you weren't with us last night, we're just going to cover you up in it. It was so great. So last weekend we had our SAFE meeting, which is safe and friendly. How did I do it? Safe and affirming friendly environment. Golly, sorry. To talk about the change in the gun laws that occurred September 1st that allow guns to be in churches and schools. So many of you, a gratifying number of you, stayed after the service last week to share your thoughts and opinions and feelings with the Board of Trustees. And so I'd like to just give you an update on where we are with this. Are you okay with that? Yes. Okay. And you'll be getting this in an email blast. So, am I still here? Okay. Dear friends, thank you to all of you who stayed for the meeting about the safety of our community after the service last Sunday, or who sent emails in lieu of attending. The atmosphere was so loving and productive, and various opinions and ideas were shared and heard with sincerity and courtesy. It was truly an extraordinary community meeting, one of the best ones I've ever participated in. Thank you for entrusting your Board of Trustees to make your policy decisions and develop procedures with staff that will best serve all of our people. I am giving you this update so that you know about the progress we are making based on your input and the research the board and staff have been diligently pursuing this week. The board has voted not to allow guns on our property. It is possible that we will determine that a minimal law enforcement presence will be the best course of action for our safety, especially given our isolated location. If that is the case, then that trained person would carry a firearm, and this would be the only exception if we come to that. Deciding not to have guns on our property is an out provided by the state of Texas now that guns are allowed in churches, schools, and other public places. This also raises a First Amendment question that we're asking the ACLU. You'll hear more about that as we move along in that process. We are exploring our options and informing ourselves in the following areas. If and when we place signs declaring a gun-free zone. Our legal and insurance liabilities, something we've not been able to get a clear answer about yet. The interpretation of the law through state representatives and law enforcement with the same ambiguities as the previous item so far. Talking with other Unity and Centers for Spiritual Living, especially those in Texas, to find out what they're doing. Talking with other clergy in Wimberley. There's a Ministerial Alliance meeting this Wednesday that I'm attending, and I've already put the topic on the table. I've already heard back from 2 of the ministers, so we will gab about that for a little bit. We're researching a safety assessor who can evaluate the unique design of our facility to make safety recommendations and suggest any modifications. This is not just about gun safety, this is about weather safety, this is about medical emergency safety, fire safety. So we're looking at the whole safety issue. This one thing kind of has a lot of things that have been added on to it that are necessary. We're exploring safety training for any emergency for staff, and then for the larger community. We're creating a template for a safety manual based on an excellent and comprehensive example from a Center for Spiritual Living in California, and a preliminary outline already created last year by one of your board members. We're at a very good starting place from which to move forward. You may be called upon to, to contribute your particular skills and talents to ensure that we are comprehensively engaged and transparent with you throughout this process. If you have any questions or suggestions, please contact any or all board members at board@unityofwimberley.com. That's it. Mm-hmm.
Check your mic because it's short.
Please turn off your cell phones at this time if you haven't already. I skipped over that important announcement. Okay, we have a Wise Women brunch next Saturday, September 28th from 10 to noon. Bring a brunch dish to share and connect with your spiritual community. Please see Karen Stockey with any questions. There's a new grief recovery for adults class beginning with Molly Steele on Thursday, October the 10th. It runs through December the 12th from 10:30 to 12:30. Flyers are available in the fireside room, and please see Molly with any information on how this process may benefit you. And I would encourage anyone who has an interest in that to go ahead and attend that wonderful program. I did it myself, and it was really a blessing. You'll be surprised how great it is. Okay, the Dare to Lead Wednesday night class is going to wrap up this week. Please finish up the book for the next class and work pages 30 through 40 of the workbook. This book study has pushed our growing edge as we journey forward with a new sense of empathy and connection. Trail of Lights. The team needs artists to create a new display for our Emily Ann Theater Trail of Lights display. Please join me and Cherie Burrows after church in the YOU class back here in the hallway for a strategy meeting. Cherie has a great idea for some new artwork, and all suggestions and ideas are welcome. The artists are going to be at this meeting, and we also have a builder team. I'd ask the builders to think back to last December. I think everything we have is in pretty good shape, but if we need some repairs or adjustments, this is the time to think of them. I try to think of the Trail of Lights as being a Halloween event, otherwise you get caught too short. So it comes on fast, and it'll be Christmas before we know it. Okay, Unity Supper Club, Betty?
Good morning. I'm wearing my wonderful T-shirt from last night, as is Tommy. I don't know if you can read it, but it says, "Love makes a family," and that's what last night was. So I am inviting you to share a meal with your family here on October 11th. Polish food, I have tickets, and I know you will feel an extended sense of love and community while you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. And now our gathering prayer with Kit Holmes.
Let's just take a really, really nice big deep breath and get ourselves grounded into this space. And if you feel so inclined and comfortable with it, you may close your eyes. And I share the words of gratitude today. My heart personally remains just overflowing, pouring out for the family, the sharing, the love, the support, the community that we represented in our larger community of Wimberley last night, and we continue today, and we know the love that we share on this hill. We know the love that we radiate from this hill. We know that it moves mountains in ways that we don't even know yet. And so from that place, please take my words as yours. I know that this thing that we call spirit, that we call God, is ever present, is in and around and through us. And it moves from this building, off of this hill, into the larger world in ways so extraordinary and so beautiful, because we know that it is love. We know that love is the only thing that is ever happening at any given time. And all we have to do is take a breath if we ever forget that we are not a part of God, because we are. We are a part of each other. And we remember, we celebrate, we dance, we sing, we wave our flags, we join hands, and always because we are joined in our hearts and in our minds. And knowing this is so, we simply affirm it and let it go into that law that says yes. And so it is. Do the la-las with me. La 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 la. You've been so kind and generous. I don't know how you keep on giving. For your kindness, I'm in debt to you. For your selflessness, my admiration. For everything you've done, you know, I'm
Just so you know, I tried to get a big drink of water just a minute ago, and my water bottle leaked on me. So I do know that there's something funny about my shirt, but it'll go away in a moment. I'm overwhelmed by what I experienced last night with about half of our congregation and over 600 people. Over 600 people marched yesterday. Over 600 people in Wimberley. I saw not one sour face on the sidelines. I saw nothing but love, nothing but support, tons of kids, tons of children. My own child helped carry the banner. And man, it was amazing. There were horses. There was a guy in a whole suit of armor. I don't know why. On a great big horse with a lot of metal on, and it was hot, and he was carrying a flag, and it was like, cool. And so it was, wow, it was just so, it was so happy. I had a hard time going to sleep last night because I thought maybe we've crossed a threshold. Because last night there was something organic and perfect, and one of those moments that if you tried to recreate it, you probably wouldn't be able to do it, but it happened because it needed to happen. It happened because we were all ready for it to happen. And thank you for helping us make it happen. Wow. It was beautiful. I couldn't go to sleep till about 2 because I couldn't come down from that energy. And we were not the only church that marched. So that's pretty cool. So, of course, the talk today is about generosity. And we saw it in spades last night. If generosity is having a positive regard for another, if that's one definition of generosity, there was plenty of positive regard for everybody, So we're coming to the end of our Brenė Brown series, and she defines generosity as extending the most generous interpretation possible to the intentions, words, and actions of others. Just think about that for a moment. Yes, it is big, and I'm actually going to use that word in just a moment. You extend the most generous interpretation possible to the intentions, words, and actions of others. The assumption of generosity is believing that people are doing the best they can. We'll come back to that in a minute, because you're either going to have a reaction that says, well, yes, that's true, or you're going to say, I don't believe that's true, that people are doing the best they can at any given moment. We're going to circle back around to that too. So if we're living big, B-I-G, big, this is what we've been talking about already. We have boundaries, we have integrity, and we have generosity. So the boundaries are, who am I? What will I allow in my life? How am I behaving? How am I allowing other people to treat me? What are my values? And that goes right into integrity. Am I living my highest truth all the time, as much as I'm able? And then generosity, that positive regard. And you know, if you're extending that to other people, then that generosity is going to also come out in the gifts that you give to others of your time, your talent, your treasure. It's going to be an insurance policy, if you will, that generosity is going to come back to you as well. Maybe not in the same place with which you gave it, but it will come to you. You know, there's something in the Bible about sowing in fields in which you do not reap. Reaping in fields in which you did not sow. Sorry, I knew I was going to get that backwards. Reaping in fields in which you did not sow. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about this. There are certain places in which you pay good attention to whether or not your generosity and your expectation about that generosity is towards someone who is an empty well. Because if you keep expecting people to act a certain way toward you, especially if you treat them a certain way and they don't, then maybe it's time to move on, at least in your soul. One of the things that this can free us of are unhealthy relationships, abusive relationships, and sometimes even the parental things. Like if you have a parent that has never been able to give you what you wanted, I'm noticing, unless there's a little in here that I haven't seen, most of us are kind of beyond the age in which we expect something from our parents that we're not going to get. Just breathe a second, because y'all all quit breathing. Whether your parent is alive or not, that's one of our initial places where we get disappointed, no matter how good our parents were. But that's one of the places where we get disappointed because our childish expectation is that they're going to give us everything we need. And if you are a parent or have acted as a parent, you know that you can't do that. So all of you who are fairly new parents, you're going to disappoint your kids. And they'll stand before a teacher one day who'll say, "Get over it." Get over it. Because that's how we mature in our spirituality. I just happened to look at Father Richard Rohr's reading today. And it's going to sound counterintuitive, but it was about our oneness in suffering. So just hang with me for a minute. I'm not alone in my tiredness or sickness or fears, but at one with millions of others from many centuries, and it is all part of life. And he talks about having a 15-year-old black lab who had cancer, and the dog knew many weeks before he did that she was ready to go. And she looked at him to let him know so. And it took a while for him to get it that it was time. But the eyes that he saw in his dog were God's eyes, he says. And the sadness she expressed was a divine and universal sadness. When we carry our small suffering in solidarity with humanity's one universal longing for deep union, it helps keep us from self-pity or self-preoccupation. We know that we are all in this together. It is just as hard for everybody else, and our healing is bound up in each other's. Almost all people are carrying a great and secret hurt, even when they don't know it. This realization softens the space around our overly defended hearts. It makes it hard to be cruel to anyone. It somehow makes us one in a way that easy comfort and entertainment never can. Isn't that lovely to know that we can, when we're sad, suffering, hurting, that we're sharing something with the rest of our human brothers and sisters, and in this case, even our beloved friends from the animal kingdom. And so it's important that we have this generous demeanor about us. We were given that example. We were given that example of generosity in the life of Jesus, in the life of many great teachers. I saw it in the life of my granny. Granny wasn't perfect, but pretty darn near. She was a godly person who thought much more about others than she did about herself. Even when her body was failing her. She loved deeply and gave generously. And you know, I saw that look in her eyes when she was ready to go. I saw it. I didn't want to see it. I wanted to hold her here. And so I was pregnant with the boys when she passed. She was a twin. And I have a feeling that their souls and Granny's said hello as they passed by each other. So this idea of generosity is vital to us. It's vital for us to have our hearts wide open. Now here's the thing. When your heart is wide open to be generous with others, it puts you in a space of vulnerability. Ruh-roh. But it's the best kind of vulnerability. It's the vulnerability that not only allows us to know the suffering of others, to share the suffering of others, it also allows us to share the joys of others. It allows us to be forgiving of others over and over and over again. Again, with boundaries. But one of the examples that I read about in the book is a woman who said, if I start feeling like somebody's driving me crazy, I need to look at me, not at the crazy person. I need to look at me because I have lost my generous nature when I'm there. They may be crazy. I mean, I've been crazy. Have you been crazy? If you have never, ever, ever been crazy, like not in your right mind, like emotionally stupid, if you've never been in that spot, I want to see what your serenity looks like. Because we've all relied upon the generosity of others to forgive and understand and be with us in our crazy times, in our sad times, in our unknowing times. Let me tell you, I've talked about this before. We're having the deepest conversations around here these days. Deep conversations. And let me tell you what's amazing. When you walk into a difficult or uncomfortable conversation with another, and you have all those defenses up because you're pretty sure you're going to get hurt or you're going to hear something you don't want to hear, all of that stuff is brittle around you. And it's hard to hold on to that defense. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. We think it's working, but it doesn't. What happens is when we soften our hearts to be with another, knowing that we are one people, those conversations become much easier. We can hear with the ears of our heart instead of hearing with the ears of our defensiveness, instead of hearing with the ears that make us want to fight back. Now, I'm not talking about spiritual work for sissies. I'm talking about the spiritual work of warriors. And it's important for us to be able to live with that paradox of our strength and our vulnerability, of being ferociously generous. But that's what we're up to. Last night, we saw courage and healing and people being themselves and kids dressing however they wanted to and humans dressing however they wanted to. Kid had a hat. I can't. Oh, I wish you would have. It was so, unique. Yeah. It was unique. It was beautifully weird. And, yeah, and Cindy's. And Cindy had a T-Rex with a rainbow. Yeah, so, rawr. I'm more like this, yeah. You don't fool me, girl. You're not a T-Rex. You're all rainbow. Oh, and by the way, Drew and David, I have to let you know that my son David took home the Texas rainbow flag. I believe he co-opted that as his own now. So I'm just letting you know you may not see it again, if that's okay. I'm calling upon your generosity on behalf of my child, who is 22. So let's go back to that whole thing about are people really doing the best that they can? I'll just kind of rephrase what Brenė Brown has said in work that she's done with people in corporations. She said that there's the, why, yes, I believe they are camp, and the heck no camp. They're not. And one of the people said, if this guy that's working for me is doing the best that he can, then I'm a jerk for acting the way I've acted. And I need to see if I can help him rather than judging him and being way less than generous with him. Man, we could say that about a lot of people, couldn't we, in our lives? If they're really doing the best they can, believe me, we can argue all day long that they could have done better. But if they could have, they would have. And it's true about us too. That's why forgiveness is such a big part of this. And that's why self-love is such a big part of this. And that's why knowing our oneness is such a big part of this. Because if we're all doing the very best we can at any given moment, then we have a different starting place for the conversation besides putting up our dukes and getting our feelings hurt. Yeah? And we have a different way to think about ourselves. Last week, somebody brought me a little bookmark with a quote from, who's this from? Swami Kripalu. Did I say that right? That's okay. When we judge ourselves, we break our own hearts. When we judge ourselves, we break our own hearts. I remember my mom saying to me one time, honey, why would you be so hard on something that God created? Is God that hard on you? I said, well, no. She said, you don't have any right to be. You don't have any right to be that hard on yourself. So, if we need to lovingly step away from places that are harmful or abusive, if we need to step away from that, we do it with love, not just picking up our toys and leaving in a huff. we let ourselves step back with love. Because even Jesus said, as he sent the disciples out to do the work that they were going to do, that he expected them to do, he said, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Think about that. Wise as serpents. That's your heart mind. And innocent as doves. That's your heart mind too. So think about that. Because if we are innocent without wisdom, then it's easy for us to be a doormat. If we try to be wise without love, then we're hard and we're harsh. And we're probably judging ourselves much harder than we're judging other people. And that is a vicious cycle that we get into. So look at me. Keep your eyes open. Put your hand right here on your heart. Breathe into your hand. Stay out here with me. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. Be brave. Keep your eyes open, because right now you're going to forgive yourself for all the things that you know and don't know need forgiving. You say, I forgive you. I forgive me. I forgive me. I was doing the best I could. I can do better, but I was doing the best that I could. And now keep your hand right there. And all the people that you've judged, treated harshly, you haven't healed yet your relationship with them, I forgive you. You were doing the best that you could. And I know this is so. And now push out a breath out. This is how we get whole. We get whole because we're built to be generous. We're built to be generous with other people and built to be generous with ourselves. Somebody sent me this last week, a beautiful little picture. I didn't have time to run out and get a physical representation. This is Eeyore. Eeyore, the very sad donkey. Pooh's friend. The awesome thing about Eeyore is that even though he is basically clinically depressed, he still gets invited to participate in adventures and shenanigans with all his friends. They never expect him to pretend to feel happy. They never leave him behind or ask him to change. They just show him love. Wow. So whether you know an Eeyore or you are an Eeyore, or if you go back and forth between those two things, know that you are just fine. You have the capacity to love and forgive. You have the capacity to do the very best that you can in even any given moment. And if you make a mistake, you back up gently and say, wow, I could have done that differently. And let me try it this way next time. Oh, I shouldn't have said those words. Let me go to that person and say, I'm taking those words back, and I apologize for using them. Do you know that's a lot easier than saying, well, I was justified. They were acting like that, so I had to say those words to them. Yep, it was out of my control. I would call that inaccurate. One woman said, if it's true that my mother was doing the best that she could, I'd be grief-stricken. I'd rather be angry than sad. So it's easier to believe she's letting me down on purpose than to grieve the fact that my mother is never going to be who I need her to be. Wow. So just take a look in your life this week. This is your homework. Take a look in your life and see how automatically we move into ungenerosity. And catch yourself and just go, okay, if I were to act generous, what would it look like? What would the generous person do? And you breathe, and you do the best you can. And if you find yourself getting down on yourself, stop yourself in your own tracks. Say, wow, I'm being awfully harsh on myself. Did I know better? Yep, I probably did. Could I do it at that moment? Nope, I probably couldn't. Can I do it differently next time? Yes, I can. That's how we grow. That's how we get unstuck. That's how we remain malleable and fluid in our lives. That's how we stay connected to God and stay connected to other people, which is the same thing as staying connected to God. So if you're one who has trouble meditating or praying or has trouble with your concept of God, just look into the eyes of someone that you trust. Look into the eyes of someone with whom you can be generous, and they can be generous with you. God's right there. That's where you can find God. Let's pray. Our prayer today comes from one of my favorite poets, an Irish poet, John O'Donoghue, who passed from this life much too young in 2008. And so open your generous heart and hear these words in praise of the earth. Let us bless the imagination of the earth that knew early the patience to harness the mind of time, waited for the seas to warm, ready to welcome the emergence of things, dreaming of voyaging among the stillness of land. And how light knew to nurse the growth until the face of the earth brightened beneath a vision of color. When the ages of ice came and sealed the earth inside an endless coma of cold, the heart of the earth held hope, storing fragments of memory, ready for the return of the sun. Let us thank the earth that offers ground for home and holds our feet firm to walk in space open to infinite galaxies. Let us salute the silence and certainty of mountains, their sublime stillness, their dream-filled hearts. The wonder of a garden trusting the first warmth of spring until its black infinity of cells becomes charged with dream. Then the silent, slow nurture of the seed's self, coaxing it to trust the act of death. The humility of the earth that transfigures all that has fallen